All right, welcome in everyone to the deep dive. We've got a good one today. We're going to be taking a look at Southern chicken and dressing. You think about those big holiday meals, Thanksgiving, you've got all the food laid out on the table and the family's all gathered around. And one dish that is just always there right in the middle of it all.
Yeah, it's really a staple of Southern cuisine. And I think it's interesting, to consider why it goes beyond just, basic sustenance. It really does bring this unique combination of savory flavors, that rich, buttery taste, a hint of herbs, and then that texture. When you have Southern chicken and dressing, there's just nothing else like it.
Yeah. So we're going to give you all the steps to make it, of course. We also want to really dive into what makes this dish so special, so enduring. Our sources today really highlight that it's not just a recipe. It really is a dish with generations of history behind it. It really brings families together.
Yeah, for sure. It's one of those dishes that's passed down through families generation after generation. And, one of the things that really kind of jumped out at me when we were looking at all the research was, for something that seems so straightforward, there's actually a lot of depth there, both in the preparation and in the history.
Yeah, that's what we're here for, right? To demystify it all. So whether you are a seasoned cook or you've never made this before and always wanted to, we're going to break down every single step for you. And I think what we found is that it's more doable than a lot of folks might think.
Hmm.
And trust me, it is definitely worth the effort. You get that incredible taste, and it's a real connection to tradition and family.
Exactly. It's like we're giving you the blueprint, understanding each step along the way and the why behind each step. It's really crucial if you want to make, that authentic Southern chicken and dressing that we all know and love.
All right. So let's jump in. Let's get started with the very foundation of this dish, the cornbread. Now, this isn't just any old cornbread.
Right. If you look at all of our sources, they're all pretty much unanimous on this point. You have to use day-old cornbread. And it's interesting to kind of understand why, because it seems like such a small detail, right?
Yeah.
But freshly baked cornbread has a lot more moisture, so if you use it, it's just going to soak up way too much of the liquid in the dressing, and you're going to end up with a soggy mess. Nobody wants that. But the day-old cornbread, it's had some time to dry out, so it gives the dressing a much better texture.
It just makes sense, right? You get that sturdier base, and it can soak up all those amazing flavors without, becoming a mushy, watery mess. So yeah, what we're doing is we're taking that day-old cornbread and we're going to crumble it into bite-sized pieces. And that's really the groundwork for everything else we're going to be doing.
I like to think of it as, we're creating this porous structure that's ready and waiting to be infused with all the, the savory goodness that we're going to be adding later on.
Okay, so step number 2, the chicken. Now, I was really glad to see that pretty much all of our sources agreed that there is a lot of flexibility with the chicken.
Yeah, and it kind of points to, how this dish came about. They were really using what they had. So it doesn't really matter if you roasted a whole chicken the day before, or you boiled some chicken specifically to use in the dressing, or even if you just have some leftover chicken from a previous meal, it's all going to work great. What you're really looking for is that nice cooked chicken flavor, and you want that shredded texture that just integrates perfectly with the dressing.
So we're taking that cooked chicken, shred it up, set it aside,
Yeah.
and, as you're eating the dressing later, you get that nice tender chicken in every bite.
It's almost like, the chicken just melts in your mouth. And it combines, like I was saying, with that, that slightly drier texture of the crumbled cornbread. It really makes a satisfying, comforting feel in your mouth when you're eating it.
Okay, on to step 3. And this is where things really start to get good. We're going to saute the veggies. This is where that aroma just starts to fill the kitchen. I love it.
Yeah, this is where we really start to build a base of flavor. So we're talking about melting butter. It's Southern cooking. There's always got to be butter. And then we're going to saute some diced onions, celery, and garlic just until they get soft and fragrant. It doesn't take very long. And that gentle cooking process really brings out all their natural sweetness and all those amazing aromatics.
Oh, man, I can smell it now. It's that classic trio of flavors, buttery onions, celery, and garlic. But it's not just about the smell, right? It's also, as those veggies soften, they're releasing all those flavors into the melted butter.
Hmm.
So you're creating this rich, savory base that is going to, it's going to flavor the entire dish.
Exactly. It's like we're taking all those essential aromatic molecules and infusing them right from the start. We're building a flavor profile from the ground up.
All right, step 4. This is where everything starts to come together. We're going to mix the dressing so we get that big bowl. And, you can see the dish starting to take shape.
Yeah, and what's really cool here is, you're combining the crumbled cornbread, those nice fragrant sautéed vegetables, and the shredded chicken. And then you add the classic Southern seasoning. So we're talking sage, poultry seasoning, salt and pepper. It seems like such a simple step, but you get all these different textures in there. And those aromas, they all start to combine. And it's just, even before it goes in the oven, it's just incredible.
Oh, yeah, you can just imagine that smell, right? That warm, home-cooked aroma. It's just like a promise of how good it's going to taste.
Yeah, it's like a sneak preview of what's to come.
All right, now for a very important step.
Hmm.
Step 5. We're going to add the broth. And this is where a lot of the sources that we looked at, they all say to be careful. Take it slow. Don't rush it.
Yeah, absolutely. If you look back at what we've read, the key here is you want to get a nice, moist consistency without making it too watery or soggy. And the best way to do that is to add the broth slowly, a little at a time, and just keep stirring it. And what that does is it lets that cornbread absorb the liquid nice and evenly, so it doesn't get too wet too fast. And what you're doing is you're basically bringing all the ingredients together and hydrating them, but you're still keeping a good texture.
Digital balancing act, right?
Yeah.
You don't want it too dry, but you also don't want it swimming in liquid.
Exactly. You want it to be just moist enough so that it all holds together nicely. And, when you transfer it to the baking dish, it should hold its shape. And you should be able to see, that everything's nice and moist, but you don't want a pool of liquid at the bottom of the bowl.
Okay, on to step 6. This is the home stretch. This is where it all comes together. We're going to bake it.
Right. So we're going to take that beautiful dressing mixture, put it in a greased baking dish, cover it tightly with foil. And that foil is important because it traps the steam inside and helps the dressing cook evenly without drying out. So that first 30 minutes, 375 degrees Fahrenheit, covered in foil. Really important step.
And then, this is the best part. We take the foil off for the last 20 to 30 minutes. And that's when the magic really happens.
You get that nice golden brown color on top, and you get those delicious crispy edges. Those are the best parts. And they really add a nice textural contrast to the soft inside.
Oh yeah, those crispy edges, man. That's one of the things that makes this dish so good. It's that contrast between the moist inside and those crunchy, caramelized bits on the edges.
Every bite is like a little flavor explosion.
Okay, finally, step 7. We can serve it up and enjoy it.
And there's one more little Southern trick that we saw mentioned quite a bit in the research. You want to let the dressing cool down a little bit after it comes out of the oven. And it's not just so you don't burn your mouth. It also lets the dressing firm up a little bit so it's easier to serve. And, you can even add a little extra warm chicken broth on top. Or even some gravy. That's how they do it down south. They like it extra moist.
That's the Southern way, for sure.
Yeah.
But, that's one of the great things about this dish. You can adjust it to your liking. Some folks like it a little drier. Some folks like it, swimming in gravy. It's up to you.
It just goes to show that even though this is a classic dish, there's still room for personal preference.
Yeah.
Different families, different regions, they all have their own little tweaks and variations.
So we've covered all the steps, but I also want to touch on a little bit of the history of this dish because, I always find that interesting. And we did some research on that too.
Yeah. One of the really cool things about Southern cuisine is that it's rooted in practicality and resourcefulness. And, most folks believe that this dish actually came about as a way to use up leftovers, specifically day-old cornbread and cooked chicken. So, they weren't letting anything go to waste.
It's amazing, right? How something so simple, something born out of necessity, became such a beloved dish. It went from being just a way to use up leftovers to being, the star of the show at holiday meals.
It really speaks to how ingrained this dish is in Southern culture. It's been passed down for generations, and it's still just as popular today as it ever was.
Absolutely. It's a true Southern classic. Now, before we wrap up, I do want to mention a few tips that we came across in our research for how to really perfect your chicken and dressing.
Yeah, and this is important. We've said it before, but we'll say it again. That day-old cornbread, it's non-negotiable. You're not going to get the right texture if you use fresh cornbread.
And we talked about this too, but it's worth repeating. You really got to be careful with the broth. Add it slowly, a little bit at a time. You don't want to end up with a soggy mess.
You got to be patient with it, Let that cornbread absorb the liquid gradually.
One thing I thought was cool, one of the sources mentioned that you can really customize the herbs that you use. They said you can use fresh thyme, rosemary, whatever you like. So even though it's a classic dish, you can still add your own personal touch.
Yeah, tradition doesn't mean you can't be creative, right? You can honor the original dish, but still add some of your own favorite flavors.
And one last tip. If you're hosting a big meal, prep the dressing ahead of time. It'll save you a lot of stress on the day of.
Oh, yeah, that's a lifesaver. You can get all the prep work done the day before, and then all you have to do is bake it when you're ready.
So there you have it. Southern chicken and dressing. As you can see, it's a pretty simple dish, but there's still a lot of thought and care that goes into making it truly amazing.
It's really a testament to how, even simple everyday ingredients can be transformed into something really special when you use the right techniques and honor those time-tested traditions.
So we hope you enjoyed this deep dive into Southern chicken and dressing. I really hope you'll give it a try. Whether you're a seasoned pro or a complete beginner, I think you'll be surprised at how easy and delicious it is.
And we'd love to hear from you. Have you made this dish before? Do you have any family secrets or tips that you want to share? Let us know.
Yeah, for sure. We'd love to hear from you guys. So come on over to our social media pages. Let us know what you think of this deep dive. Tell us about your tips and tricks. And if you make this dish, we would love to see pictures. We love seeing what you guys are cooking up in your kitchens.
And don't forget, we have the complete recipe for Southern chicken and dressing over on our website, www.forkandfry.com. You'll find all the steps we talked about, plus a bunch of other great Southern recipes.
So head over to www.forkandfry.com. And while you're there, sign up for our newsletter. That way, you'll never miss a new recipe or a new deep dive.
We're always cooking up something new over here, so be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out.
All right, so what are you waiting for? Go grab some day-old cornbread, cook up some chicken, and make some memories with this incredible Southern dish. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you next time.
Happy cooking, everyone!